Hello, everyone. Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And today I decided I wanted to do a different topic today, but then I decided I wanted to just kind of stay on this topic right now about the three food items that I store, especially with everything going on that, some people now, every time there's some new big event, that's when a lot of people start going, oh, maybe I should be doing this. And so I figured now's a good time to talk about it. I don't know how many of these I'll do like this, but just picking some of the three random things for each one of these videos that I like to store up and why. And, they're because they do have multiple uses, and that's mostly what I'm looking at when it comes to that. The three I'm going to talk about, I'm starting off with nuts. Now, not just one particular kind of nut, just whatever suits you. I like to store quite a few different kinds because I use them in different ways. And, I like to store Brazil nuts, but they're highly expensive. The main reason now I even keep any on hand is it is a good natural source of selenium, and I love Brazil nuts. So I haven't been doing anything fancy with the Brazil nuts. Besides, Patrick doesn't he doesn't like Brazil nuts, he doesn't like walnuts, and he doesn't like pecans. So when I stock up on those things, it's more for me. But he likes almonds and peanuts, so I stock up on a lot of those too. And the thing that is just so great about storing up nuts, I mean, you can pick some of the less expensive ones. Usually you can get some good organic almonds, even sliced almonds. I get all that stuff now from Azure Standard, and they're not going to be near as expensive as like macadamia nuts or Brazil nuts, which, I mean, they're super expensive now. But the thing with nuts is not only are they just a good added source of protein to have on hand, that can also be different than certain other types of protein and maybe you're getting burned out on, but they have multiple purposes. So if you have peanuts, especially if you have a grain mill like ours where you have a peanut butter auger, you can make your different nut butters using that. And then you've got obviously adding nuts to treats or just eating them as needed as you want to. Patrick just loves to snack on sunflower seeds and peanuts are a couple of his two favorite things to just snack on. So I always have those on hand for him to take when he's going to work or doing whatever he's doing, going down to the property here to work on something. So he has some instant protein that he can snack on. That's normally what he has. You can use them in cookies and breads. And like I did last year when I was just creating a whole bunch of cinnamon roll, I got on a tangent and just was creating all these new cinnamon roll recipes. Not all of them necessarily had cinnamon, but I did the chocolate peanut butter ones. I took some peanuts and then just kind of crushed them with my mortar and pestle and then sprinkled them on top. And, there's so much you can do with them. But then to top it off, especially for people who have someone who has to be dairy free in the home, or maybe they just choose to be vegan, having all different kinds of nuts on hand means you can make your own non-dairy milk products and cheese products, and then you can even use the pulp from those nuts after you make the milk I use the pulp from certain nuts, like when I do a pecan cashew blend is perfect because you can take that pulp and it's really great for making like a non-dairy cheese. The flavor's good, the texture's good. Not all nuts work that, like if you try to do pecan by itself, the pulp alone, it works, but it's just not the same. It doesn't have that same creamy texture that the cashews add. And the two just make a perfect combination for that. But then you can also take from any of it, whether it be like coconut or almond or Brazil nut or hazelnut or whatever it is that you're using to make your dairy-free milk, you can take that pulp and then dry it out and then just powder it up really good once it's fully dry. And now you have a good gluten-free flour replacement, or just a flour that you can add in with your regular flour to add more nutrition, more protein and the like, or even more flavor. I've used like the Brazil nut milk pulp that I then added to a bread. Was it a banana bread? I don't remember. I might even have, I think I have a video on it. Maybe it was the apple spice bread. And I used the Brazil nut pulp in there too. I didn't even bother drying it out. Because usually your sweet breads like that are a wetter dough anyway. I just threw it in as is. But then if you're wanting to put it up for, like you don't want to use it up right away, you can just dehydrate it and then powder it and then vacuum seal it in a jar and save it for when you need it. These are some of the reasons I really like having nuts and seeds on hand, is for all those things. Well, I said I was focusing mostly on nuts, but this goes for seeds too. Especially like the sunflower seeds, but then also like seeds like chia and flax and black seed. In fact, my crackers, the cracker bread dough or mixture. Right now I have the seeds soaking while I'm doing the show, and I did put the black seed, the flax seed, and sounds like I said the same thing twice. Black seed, flax seed, and chia seeds in there to soak in that brine, that warmed up brine water. And then when I'm done, I added 1 cup of flour, and then I'll go add the rest of the flour, mix it in and knead it, and then get my crackers made. That's also a way that, especially with your seeds, there's a lot of minerals in a lot of the different seeds that you can incorporate into your different baked goods to just really increase the nutrient value of your foods. I mean, black seed has a stronger flavor, so I don't like to add that to everything. Not typically will I add that to something like, if I'm making a bread dough and I'm going to use it to make cinnamon rolls or something like that, I'm not going to add black seed in there. That's just my personal preference, but I will add the flax and the chia because they blend well with anything. And then just increase that nutrient value. When it comes to storing nuts and seeds, I always vacuum seal into jars. You don't want to just leave your nuts in whatever they came in or not vacuum seal. The 2 best options for storing them long term is to freeze them or to vacuum seal. Vacuum sealing will prevent them from going rancid. It's being exposed to oxygen for too long of a period of time. That's what causes them to go rancid. And too high of a heat as well too, but mostly that oxygen exposure. If my jars stay vacuum sealed, I can have nuts and seeds stored for years and years, no matter how fatty they are, and they do not go rancid. However, I have found a couple of jars that either I forgot to vacuum seal after I opened them, and then they got buried in the back of the pantry and forgot about, or kitchen cabinet, or they came unsealed in storage. So from this point on, anytime I vacuum seal especially the more expensive ones like the Brazil nuts and such, I will only use the Superb lids to vacuum seal them in, because I haven't had issues with losing a seal with my Superb lids, where the newer Ball and Kerr ones, whether I use brand new ones or used ones, they don't hold their seal like they once used to, but the Superb do. And I think you could probably knock those around quite a bit without them losing their seal. Sometimes the jars can get knocked together, and that can cause them to lose their seal, which again is another good reason to keep a band on there nice and tight. But even then, if the oxygen can get into the jar, your nuts will go rancid. So whatever works best for you. I like to vacuum seal because it saves freezer space. Okay, so the second item is dairy powders. So I feel like I've talked about these a lot, but I've talked about a lot of this stuff a lot. But I want to clarify the number one reason why I store dairy powders. And I've tried various different kinds. And when it comes right down, I've got buttermilk powder, I've got heavy cream powder, butter powder, whole milk powder. But if I just, I even have cream cheese powder, sour cream powder, a lot of it just to try it out or to have it on hand in a pinch. That's the main thing. If I don't have access to fresh dairy, then I want to know I have something as a backup. But let me touch on the buttermilk thing. I won't stock up on any more buttermilk powder. My preferred way for buttermilk is to simply just take whole milk and add some lemon juice to it or homemade vinegar and let it curdle. If I need buttermilk for pancakes or biscuits or something, that's what I do. And I like the taste of it way better than the powdered buttermilk. All dairy powders have a powdered dairy flavor to them to some degree, but some taste better than others. Whole milk powder, I actually kind of like. I don't mind it in certain things. But I do try to keep rotating through it, and there are certain things I will use it in, certain things I'll still prefer fresh milk in, so I do like to keep some frozen, but what if I can't get fresh milk and I run out of the frozen? Then I know I have lots of whole milk powder. So the top 3 I will continue to keep stocking up on are the whole milk powder, the butter powder, and the heavy cream powder. And I mean, you wouldn't even need to do the heavy cream powder if you had the whole milk powder and the butter powder, not buttermilk powder, butter powder. Because then to get a good, rich, heavy cream powder, just combine the butter powder with the whole milk powder, and there you go. Now you've got a heavy cream powder. It's the thing I like about this is that besides having it on hand for in a pinch, I do currently what I'm doing is using them for making white sauces. That's my favorite thing to use the dairy powders for, is any kind of white sauce, whether it be a white sauce for biscuits and gravy, or an a la king, like chicken a la king, turkey a la king, or like the meatballs in white gravy that I do, or an Alfredo sauce, anything that's going to have a dairy base. I find that using it in that way, I like it best. And then, like with the butter powder, I do like adding it to my pie crusts and my breads. That doesn't mean I don't still add another fat to it, though I do find I biscuits. So this just still blows me away. I can make biscuits and not put any kind of, no palm shortening, nothing like that, no other fat. Just put butter powder in it, and they turn out fluffy and good, and they have that nice little butter flavor in them. I love using the butter powder in biscuits. I'm not saying everybody's going to love that. I find they turn out really good though. But in other things like the yeast breads and the pie crust, I add it more as just a way to add more flavor. That butter flavor in there without having to use my more fresh butter. So I buy, just like with the whole fresh milk, I buy it from Measure Standard, the butter and the fresh milk. And then I freeze a lot of that. There are things I'm always going to prefer the fresh butter for. I mean, fresh meaning even if I've frozen it before, over the butter powder, but then I can use the butter powder in other ways that will extend the use of the fresh butter. So that's another reason I like to have those on the hand, so I can reserve the fresh butter for things that it's really best with, like on popcorn, on toast, and the like. Though the butter powder works too, and it's fine, fresh butter is better. But yeah, but adding it to other things and helping, and then using it in the white sauces. So I use the whole milk powder, the heavy cream powder, and the butter powder all in making a nice rich white sauce. And then of course there's the obvious uses of, like, if you run out of fresh milk and you don't have access to more, then yeah, you can whip up a batch of milk and then just put it in your fridge. And again, like I keep saying, when it comes to dairy powders, do not bother storing non-fat dairy powders. Absolute waste of time. They actually taste worse over time, where the whole powders with all the fat in them, they keep their flavor better, they taste better all the way around, and you're going to need the extra calories. This is why I don't get about people who refuse to stock up on things like any kind of sugar, like honey, organic cane sugar, or anything that has fat in it, like whole milk powder. Well, because it's fattening, it's bad for you. Some people are still in this old mindset. No, you need that good, healthy fat, and especially in a grid down situation when calories really matter and you're going to need them, you're going to want those whole milk powders. You're going to want those nuts and seeds and the peanut butters. you're going to need those calories in a grid down situation. But obviously, you don't want to live off of just one of them. You're not going to just sit around and eat fat. You're not going to just sit around and eat sugar. You're going to need all of them, just like your plants. And right now, it's vegetables that are being demonized. Yet, vegetables have a bunch of nutrients in them that your meats don't have, and your fats don't have, and your dairies don't have, and your fruits don't have. So, every food group needs to be covered in some way, especially in a grid down situation where you may not have access to. You guys, pipe down over there. Huh. Where you might not have access to all these things. So growing as much as you can. And if like Tyler and Deb, if you have the ability to have your own dairy animals and meat animals, then yes, go for it. If you can't, then this is where stocking up is important, because you're going to need these things. So I'm not going to be one of these AI people or other types, AI people meaning fake persons, and even real people that are saying, run out and buy this stuff today. No, I don't talk that way. I try to encourage people to kind of get on the right path and do what you can a little bit at a time to start building your pantry and building up what you need most. Don't run out and buy 50 pounds of whole milk powder if you don't think you're ever going to use it, but maybe somebody in your family will. But maybe it will be best to start with something small, try working with it and see, is this something that's going to be valuable to my pantry? And then look at stocking up on it from that point, and then doing what you can. You don't have to run out and say, yeah, I just hate it when I hear that. You need to run out today. Usually it's the AI garbage. Run out now and buy X amount of pounds or so many bags or boxes or whatever of this or that. No. If it's something you've never tried, you need to try it first and see if it's even going to be something that will work for you and your family and work in the recipes that you make. So that's just like the dairy powders, me working with them and finding, okay, what do I like them in best, and using them for white sauces is the way I like them best. And then the butter powder and a few other things. You don't want to just run out and buy a bunch of stuff and then never be able to use it. And then the dried goat's milk, yes, I stock up on that too. And I'm really glad I did, that I had a bunch in stock when Jace was born, because his mom just was not putting out the milk. She didn't want to put him on the formulas, and thank the Lord for that. And I said, I know the perfect thing. I have a nice stash here of whole goat milk powder. And he took right to that. I mean, he was getting skinnier and skinnier shortly after he was born, because she kept trying to nurse him and she just wasn't putting out enough milk for him, and he was losing weight. And so it was scary, but he got on that goat milk, and in no time he plumped up. He didn't get super fat. He put on weight, and he got, a little bit of rolls to him, which is what he needed. And it was perfect. And he loved that goat milk. And it was a perfect thing to have on hand. Meyenberg whole goat milk powder was what I was using. There's other brands out there, but that's the one that we've always stuck to. And then I restocked on that, so I still have it on hand just in case. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, I've already kind of hinted at quite a bit, and that is sugars of all types. Oh, how dare I? It's poison. It's poison. It's scary. Just like the vegetables are poison. Don't eat vegetables. They're poison. Don't eat meat. It's poison. Don't eat dairy. Don't eat eggs. They're going to kill you. Okay, obviously, anyone who knows me knows I'm, being sarcastic, because I get so doggone tired of every food group. I mean, I remember when it was just sugar, or just the eggs, the egg yolk, or just the dark meat. And I'm like, when I was a kid, I'm like, the dark meat on the chicken is the best part. What's wrong with people? Now they're telling me it's bad for me. Of course, now, now they've kind of come full circle on that. And here's a funny thing. I read an article. When I was a teenager, I used to get Shape magazine back when it first came out. It was actually a health magazine and not a fashion magazine. What happened? But anyway, and I really liked it as a teenager. It had a lot of good health advice. But I remember reading, I think it was in that one, about how At some point, everything is good for you. Everything that's being you're told is bad for you at some point is going to be good for you. And at that time, the writer made a joke about at some point chocolate's going to be good for you. And they were joking. Then come to find out, it wasn't a whole lot of years later where they're talking about, well, chocolate's actually good for you in moderation if you eat the right kind. Yeah. So sugar has its place. And obviously, we don't just sit around and eat sugar. It's bad for us to do that. But that doesn't mean that sugar does not have its place. And God gave us sugar cane. He gave us honey and maple syrup and molasses, right? He gave us all this stuff, and it all has its place. And even if you weren't going to use the sugar in any of your cooking or baking, you're not going to ever make cookies or homemade chocolates or pies and jams and jellies from your own homegrown berries, apple butters and pear butters. Maybe you're never going to use sugar to do any of that stuff, or chocolate syrup, or caramel sauce, or buttermints. Even if you're just so anti-sugar that you don't want to do that, you're like, well, I'll never do any of that stuff, even in a grid down situation, because I don't want to bring joy to my life. Having that sugar on hand, especially like the cane sugar or raw honey for fermentation, you can make your own homemade wines. You can make your own homemade vinegars. And even if you don't drink, that wine can have many uses. I use wine for making homemade medicinal extracts. I use wine for marinating meats and the like. And then the vinegar I use for even more things, for cleaning, for washing my hair with, for using in foods, etc., etc. The list is long. You need to have some kind of sugar. Now, unless you're making your vinegar or your wine out of pure juice that has already got a lot of natural sugars, which here's something: when it comes to grapes, most grapes used for making wine are very tart grapes. So sugar has to be added in order to get that alcohol content up. You're not going to get it with just the plain grape juice. Sugar is always added, and honey can be used too. This is where you can make wine out of just honey and water. So that is called mead, for those who don't know. And I started making mead long before I started making wine out of my own juices from my, rhubarb and apples and berries and grapes. Having that cane sugar or honey on hand, those two, especially when it comes to fermentation, I wouldn't recommend any of the others for fermentation because they're going to be higher mineral content. Your maple syrups, your definitely molasses, very high in minerals. The higher the minerals, the slower or less likely your things are going to ferment well. This is why raw honey or cane sugar, organic blonde cane sugar, still has some minerals, but not enough to kill a ferment. And it's cheaper than raw honey, but healthier than white GMO beet sugar. It's going to have its place. If you want to make your own homemade vinegars out of whatever you got growing in your garden, I like to make vinegars out of all kinds of herbs and scraps, like your apple peels and cores are not going to have the same amount of sugar as a straight apple juice, but maybe you want to keep your apple juice, and then, or turn that into a wine and then use the scraps for making a vinegar. Then you're going to need that sugar to make that vinegar, or make it, or for any herbs. So if I'm gathering the different flowers and the rosemary and the nasturtium and whatever, and I'm making vinegars out of all these things, there's little to no sugar in those. And you have to have sugar to make vinegar. You have to have sugar. Yeah, or I should say you have to have some kind of carbs. This is why vinegar can be made from, potatoes or rice or whatever, because of the high carb content. And it has to have that to be able to convert it to alcohol and then convert it to vinegar. So even if you don't like joy in your life, with your own homemade jams and chocolate syrups and caramel sauces. If you at least want to have your own homemade wines, even if you don't drink, but for doing the things I mentioned and homemade vinegars, then you do need to have some sugar on hand. And especially for the fermentation, again, either raw honey or organic cane sugar. One of those two is going to be best for making those kind of ferments. Here's the other thing too. Remember, in a grid down situation, calories are going to be important. Nutrition is going to be important. So obviously, you're not going to just sit around and eat a bag full of organic cane sugar because of the calories. But it's okay to add those calories in because you're going to need them. Just make sure you're getting plenty of other very nutritious food. But yeah, anyway, all these things, all these different kinds of things, even the maple syrup, they can all have multiple uses. And I think it's a good thing to have these things stocked up, especially if you don't think, if you can't grow sugar cane, you can't keep bees for yourself, and you certainly can't find non-genetically modified sugar beets these days, then, having ways that you can have stuff like that on hand so that you can keep these other things going, I think is incredibly important. Based on the three that I shared here, share why you would store up on any of these things. What's important to you about maybe stocking up on nuts or stocking up on dairy powders or stocking up on in some kind of sugar, be it honey, maple syrup, cane sugar, or all of the above.